Hello, all. Welcome you all to another session by Ability. This is Revati, and I'll be your host for today. Hope all of you are doing fine and are keeping safe. It's lovely to have you all here with us today. In our today's session, which is the part one of the behavior modification and management, we'll be focusing on the strategies and techniques to reduce challenging and problematic behavior. We will discuss in detail about the technique of extinction and response interruption and redirection. This session would be conducted by Ms. Tejashree Gambhir. She is a psychologist and a behavioral intervention expert. More about her a little later. As we wait for our fellow friends to join us, let's sit back and enjoy some music. Seems like most of our fellow friends have joined us. With no further ado, let's begin with our session for today. A quick introduction about ability.
Every child is unique and wants to thrive. Excellent carers can help a child blossom. To achieve excellence, educators and therapists require years of experience and mentorship. We at Ability are obsessed with how we can reduce this time to excellence by bringing the best knowledge from around the globe and yet make it very affordable. We believe this is very important to do for the community. Please join us in the movement to bring out the best in every child. Besides the knowledge sharing from various experts through community webinars, we have embarked on our next journey, and that is to provide you with more knowledge through workshops across learning paths, specially designed for you. Starting with ASD, ADHD, behavioral, speech and language development, motor skills, remedial English, and maths. We intend to cover more areas as we learn from you what you need and create more resources for you. As an Ability member, you will have access to at least 6 live workshops every month, which are part of each learning path, and unlimited access to the past workshop recordings. You will also have access to the resources management tool and the student success tools. If you want to start using them in your practice, please ask our support group. We will send you guides on how to use them. Very soon, we will also be offering you an opportunity to be part of the curated community and mentorship programs. More will be shared when we are ready. As mentioned earlier, among our experts and Ability team, we have specially created several resources for you to download and share with anyone who can benefit from them. For every workshop you attend, we will also be sharing the relevant resources with you post your learning. So don't forget to register for the workshops that we have specially organized for you, and continue to give us your most genuine feedback so that we can improve and continue to build value for you. Thank you, and we shall see you at the workshops.
Moving on, let me now introduce you to the resource speaker for today. Ms. Tejashree Gambhir is a psychologist and a behavioral intervention expert with years of experience as panel consultant for children with special needs at Sahyadri Hospital and an inclusive facilitator at Pawar Public School in Pune. She's worked with individuals with special needs and their parents through evidence-based approaches with that of applied behavioral analysis. She advocates training and empowering parents, teachers, and carers, and increasing the overall quality of life of individuals with special needs and their family. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today, ma'am. I now hand over the podium to you. Before I hand it over to you, I would like to inform the participant that the flow of the today's session would begin with that of a presentation by a resource speaker, followed by a Q&A segment. Please address all your queries and inputs in the chat box to both the panelists as well as the attendees. And please know that the session is for 2 hours so that you get enough time to clarify your doubts and address your queries to the speakers and get it answered directly from them. Hope you all have a lovely learning.
Hi, Revati. Thank you. Once again, I thank Ability for this platform and this opportunity, and a wonderful evening and the days or nights greetings to all the viewers and the attendees. A big hello from my side. Okay, so yeah, before I begin with the content, the 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 flow that we're having is the central topic that we're having is understanding the challenging behaviors and the how we can go about that, right? So what could be the framework, how to map the behaviors and how to understand how to take data about it, how to make hypothesis, then what's the next step towards it and everything. So we've been having a wonderful time doing this, and this is actually the part one from the previous two workshops that we had. So now we are starting with the techniques and some strategies that we can ponder over. We can actually have a little bit of understanding of, so that we can go into depth of the particulars that we want to operate or to implement in our settings in day-to-day life when we are working with our students or with our children, right? So today we are going to look at it's the part one series. So we are going to look at the extinction and RIRD. Then it will be followed by another few techniques which are on increasing positive behaviors, mainly around the reward systems and positive reinforcement and differential reinforcement and other things. Right. And part three will include very important aspect of FCT, SST, and other techniques which help us. They are like the golden key cards once we are dealing with children with special needs. So we have to always consider those factors, and after that we'll be having a finale session where we'll be understanding how to design an effective behavior modification plan, right? What are the considerations that we should have, before we are sitting down to write a behavior modification plan? What are the things that we need to understand that go together, and the things that do not work in isolation? So writing up, so understanding the challenging behavior, the framework behind it, some of the techniques that we can use, and then actually really approaching the challenging behaviors with a solid plan, and how to go about it and everything. So that's the thread that we are following. And I request you, everybody, to go back to the previous workshops that we had, so that you can follow the links of the bits and pieces that we discussed before. So just to take a quick recap of the things that we had in our previous couple of workshops. So we discussed a lot about frameworks to understand challenging behaviors, all right? When we are discussing children with special needs, there are a few things that we need to remember, okay? There are two aspects that we need to remember, that there are the reasons which could be condition specific, like in ADHD, it could be impulsivity, or it could be lack of the logical reasoning framework or organizational skills and everything, right? In LD, it could be visual perception and a lot of other stuff. In autism, if you consider, there could be a lot of things like the inability to express, the inability to process the world around you. And along with that, all the children who are falling on the spectrum of the developmental disorders, they will be having some sorts of sensory imbalances, and they will be perceiving the world in different way than we do. So what are some ways and frameworks that we need to keep in mind? Apart from that, we also saw that communication, right, challenging behaviors is sort of a means to communication, right? every challenging behavior. We went through a lot of examples and a lot of interaction around how behaviors, or specifically challenging behaviors, can communicate to you, right? We also saw the functions of behavior, right? So along with the condition specific things, there are a few other reasons which, which can be generally there, and we can categorize them, the behaviors, roughly into those, those four functions. So we saw the four functions of sensory, escape, tangible, and attention, right? So we also saw that how we can keep data, how we can understand which behavior has what function, how we can use certain tools and checklists and everything, so that we can find out what is the reason behind, what is the hypothesis, what is the possible reason behind this, and whatever possible reason we feel, whatever the hypothesis we have in front of us, for example, this behavior is happening due to sensory reasons, but then it's just an hypothesis, right? We need to have some solid backup, solid data to say that yes, it is happening due to this. Because unless and until we have a solid reason, a solid foundation of the analysis of the behavior, we will not be able to put interventions. If you don't know the function of the behavior, you will never be able to put the intervention in the first place, right? So we saw a lot of tools and checklists, how to go about it and how to arrive at certain conclusions and everything, how to back up your hypothesis about the functions of the behavior, the reasons why these behaviors are occurring, all right? And we also saw in each and every workshop that the important question to ask when you're looking at a problem behavior, right? Any behavior for that matter, any behavior, if it is maintained, by maintained, I mean if it is repeated over and over, that is what I mean by maintained. So any behavior, when it is repeated over and over again, any behavior which is maintained for a period of time, what we want to ask is, what is maintaining that behavior? All right. So what is it that is keeping the behavior go on? And the answer is the consequences. We also saw the three-term contingency of ABC of the behavior. We also did some wonderful exercises with lovely participation from the audience about how we can take one behavior, choose one behavior, and compartmentalize it into the three parts, which is the A, B, and C, the antecedent, behavioral, consequence, right? So we went through that. So we took a behavior, we could analyze it into the antecedent, the trigger part of it, the B behavior, and the consequence part of it, right? So that's how we want to take that further. We want to take the functions of the behavior in mind. And now we are going to understand usually, what are the things that are helpful when we are looking at behavioral interventions, right? So whenever there is a problem behavior, the list is there in front of you, okay? So functional communication training, after you have done the FBA, the functional behavior analysis that we spoke about. So after we have done that, functional communication training, skills development into various areas, including imitation, play skills, let's say motor skills, and let's say joint attention and everything. So all those sort of stuff, we need to increase those skills. Okay, that is one approach. Functional communication training is another aspect of it, wherein depending on the strengths and needs of the child, we can choose the appropriate path, which is like verbal behavior or any alternative augmentative communication systems like PECs or something like that, all right? So additional to that, in addition to that, there are visual supports, right? Social skills training is one of the very important aspects of reducing problem behaviors, right? When you're considering a behavior modification plan, we will be discussing these at length, in the coming workshops. But just to give you, a brief idea that, any child, if you take with developmental disorders, ADHD, if you take, the child is definitely lacking on social skills. He does not have peer skills. He does not have group behavior skills. He does not have how to focus your attention when you have been given different tasks and everything. So, you will have to tailor make some, some sort of social skills building programs for that child. All right, so we will be taking different interactive exercises and hypothetical cases when we will be discussing how we can best cater a plan for increasing social skills, in a condition specific scenario, right? So that would be wonderful. Along with that, when the child is in the community or in the school, so there is additional support that at times the child requires, and we need to always keep that in mind. Okay, and how to do that judiciously? How do we know that this child requires support at school, and the shadow should be a good option? And for this child, a shadow should not be a good option. So things like that. So how to implement buddy systems and everything. So all these things we need to take in mind. Sensory integration, occupational therapy are very, very crucial parts when we are facing challenges with sensory needs, and the vestibular and proprioceptive imbalances, how the child is perceiving the world, and how, see, sensory seeking happens with everybody. Okay, but the outcome that comes for children with special needs is very, very different. And that is sort of the behavior that comes out is their expression to whatever they're feeling inside, right? And the more we work on these things holistically, a better picture can be derived, right? And none of these things will ever work unless and until you are training the parent and you're educating the parent and guiding the parent on how to use all these techniques when you are at the home setting. Not just in home setting, when the parent is taking the child out in the community or at somebody's place or somewhere else. So we are going to discuss, we are going to do exercises in all these areas. So this is like a guideline for us, and we'll be discussing about that. So beginning with just a bit of it. So there are so many techniques and strategies that I can only discuss a few at a time. And I want you to give a clearer picture, though, it's simply, I want to put a disclaimer over here that these techniques need to be performed by people who are expert in this. Okay, so I'm going to introduce these techniques to you, and if you are somebody who is working with children with special needs, for example, if you are a professional who is working with children with special needs, I encourage you to go and get the deepest knowledge or certification and valid credentials and knowledge about this before you go on and start implementing these, because as I'm going to explain to you, there are many pitfalls and everything. So there are many things, many areas and many spots where you will need your expert behavior analyst expert there for you to understand the situation and guide you through that path. Okay, if you are a parent, reach out to the behavior analyst experts, whoever is there closer to you or online, whatever is there for you. So these need to be performed. These techniques need to be performed under highly trained and qualified behavior analysis. So we are I am undergoing some such kind of a training right now, and I'm understanding that it's not just the techniques that are there and I take it from there and I just apply it on a child and boom, wow, that is a miracle and that's happening. It does not happen like that. Okay, so another important aspect is that you cannot just choose one or two techniques that I'm going to talk about in next 3 workshops, counting this one, and say that, okay, this technique is going to work on this behavior and yes, that's the end of it. No, none of these techniques will work in isolation. So there, I will be talking about some reducing behavior techniques, so reductive techniques, and I will be talking about some positive behavior increasing techniques, all right? So one has to be very, very wise and judicious about selecting these techniques, okay? You can't simply go with reductive techniques, or you can't simply go with positive behavior increasing techniques. No. So it has to be a decision. It has to be a very judicious decision in terms of what techniques you want to choose from the reductive one and how you want to support it with the positive behavior increasing techniques. What is the apt one that is going to go fit well with the techniques that we have selected to reduce the behaviors, and what is going to increase the better picture, okay, what is going to bring forward the better picture, right? So you need to keep these things in mind. However, in our clinical settings, in our professional settings, or in our day-to-day settings, when we are having a child with special needs in our day-to-day life, we need to at least be aware that there are these techniques. The biggest challenge that I faced when I was a professional and a newcomer in this field was that there wasn't much awareness about all these techniques, which, which would have been helpful, I feel, if I had known about this right before. So it's a good point to start, to understand that there are these techniques around, and which can be performed with the children with developmental disorders, and there is tremendous amount of evidence base. There is tremendous amount of research that says that these techniques work in these settings, in specific settings, which are, supposed to work in certain settings, right? So having said all of this, now I go ahead. So when we want to approach a challenging behavior, so I would rather have this sort of a clarification. So when I study, I usually draw charts, I usually draw drop downs and tables and figures and everything. So this is something that helps me, and I hope it does to you as well. Okay. So usually if we take the techniques, they are in a very technical language, they are called antecedent based techniques and consequence based techniques, right? So let's not go into the technical stuff, although you know by now, whoever, the participants who have attended the previous workshops, they know antecedent, they know behavior, they know consequences, right? So antecedent is the trigger, that triggers the behavior. B is the behavior that happens in front of you. And C is the consequence, which immediately follows the behavior. So for example, I'm thirsty. Okay, I'm thirsty is the antecedent of me going to the water filter and fetching myself a glass of water. So taking a glass of water in my hand to drink is the B behavior that I can see, that I can observe. And the antecedent or the trigger to it is the thirst, all right? So me being thirsty is the trigger. And now the consequence, immediately after I drink water, immediately after I show the behavior of drinking water, the consequence that follows immediately is that I'm relieved from the thirst. My thirst is satisfied. So that's the consequence. So this is how we can take any behavior and classify, right? So there are some reductive measures which focus on reducing behaviors. Okay, so they focus on withholding stuff. They focus on removing the certain things and from the environment and everything. So that's why I have named them reductive measures. All right. There are some increasing positive repertoire behavior stuff, right? So what we do is we add something to the environment. There is a lot of positivity around it with the help of rewards and reinforcements and social praise and sort of stuff. Okay, there's a lot of gaining of skills in the second segment. So we work on a lot of skills acquisition in this segment. Okay, there is more focus is there on the success of the child. Okay, so with rewards and everything, we appreciate, we strengthen the behavior and everything. So I usually, love to work around these things. However, sometimes we have to, be judicious about using these things as well sometimes. Okay. In addition to that, there is not only reducing or increasing behaviors. There is some other stuff as well, which can fantastically work. Right? So there are some environmental adjustments, some modifications, some additional supports and everything, which when we put in the environment, when we add it to the environment of problem behavior or negative behavior, they work like fantastically. One very good example of this is, let's say, visuals. All right. So I'm very, very excited to talk about this, because this is how it becomes easier for us to understand how we can approach the behavioral, problems. So I'm sure that you are having certain examples in your mind, certain children, certain behaviors of theirs in your mind, and you have immediately started to, put them in the situation where maybe you can use some reductive measures, maybe you can use some positive measures and some other stuff as well. So I'm very, very interested in terms of how we go ahead and, we can club them together, the examples and your experiences, and in the Q&A segment, right? So as I said before, that the general classification that is technically done is consequence-based and antecedent-based. So when we first talked about reductive measures, these ones, so they are based mainly on consequence-based. Okay, so if the consequence is pleasurable, the behavior will go up. If the consequence is not so pleasurable, the behavior should go down. So we are going to play a lot around the consequences after the behavior has happened. That is why it is consequence-based. And the other strategies that are there, which are antecedent-based, which will tell us about the techniques that we can apply at the antecedent level itself, so that there is reduction of behaviors. We are preventing the behaviors to from happening, and that's how there is less negativity, there is less stress, and a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, and a lot of success and gaining in the environment, right, in the repertoire of the child. Okay, so roughly I've given you an idea. So let us go ahead with the model. So I spoke a lot about antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Okay, so this is the model, the ABC contingency. So the trigger for the behavior to happen is antecedent, A, B, behavior, and C, consequence. So by now, my participants are well experts into taking up a behavior and dividing them into this ABC analysis. This is how we analyze a behavior, right? But still, there are a few participants who are new to this scenario, to this platform, and to this journey that we're having. So I would like to just give you one more example, and then we can go ahead. Okay, so right, so let us take a behavior. Okay, any behavior. Okay, let's say I'm drawing a line. Okay, drawing a standing line. I'm a student and I'm drawing a standing line. Okay, so me drawing a standing line is an observable thing that is happening in front of my eyes. Okay, so I can see, somebody can see that I am, actually taking the pencil and actually scribbling something down. I'm drawing a standing line. Okay, so that's my behavior. Anything that is observable, we can, measure it, we can quantify it. That is behavior, right? Overt behavior, which can be observed. So that is B, behavior. So let us assume that I'm a student, I'm drawing a standing line. So a possible antecedent would be that my teacher has given me an instruction to draw a standing line. So my teacher's instruction to draw a standing line is the antecedent for my behavior. This triggers my behavior. The antecedent, the teacher saying draw a standing line, is triggering my behavior, is the reason why I'm drawing a standing line. Understood the relation? Now, so teacher says draw a standing line, I draw a standing line, and as a consequence, wow, I get a thumbs up from my teacher. My teacher says, well done, good job, wonderful. Immediately after I've drawn the standing line, and that becomes the consequence. Okay, so we are going to talk and play a lot around antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So this is one example. I hope everybody is clear about it. If at all anybody is having problems or understanding how to compartmentalize a behavior into A, B, and C, we can do the exercise in the Q&A segment, definitely, right? I'll be happy to do it. Okay, so now moving ahead. So once we have understood that there is B, behavior, there is a possible antecedent to it, and the C, consequence, is there, which immediately follows the behavior. Now we are going to talk about consequence. Okay, remember I had just in the first slide I had spoken about consequences, right? Consequences maintain behavior. So any behavior, if it is maintained, any behavior, if it is repeated over a period of time, it is being repeated. That means that the consequences are pleasurable or desirable for it. So the consequences are such that the child is repeating the behavior again and again, because the consequences are such that the child, he or she, likes them. Okay, even though we do not see it, even though we can't really directly see how the consequences are nice, For example, if somebody is banging head, okay, a child with special needs is banging head, and this behavior is being repeated, okay, if the consequence is not desirable for the child, naturally the child won't show it. However, if the child is repeatedly banging the head, that means that the consequence that is getting, that is the child is getting out of it, is somewhere reinforcing, somewhere positive. Okay, so this is how we want to remember. If a behavior is going up or maintained, that means the consequences are desirable. They are reinforcing for the behavior. Our job as professionals becomes to find out how and why. That's why we go back to the functional analysis of the behavior, the checklist, how to find out the functions and everything, and understand how the behaviors are related, how the consequences are related. And we go back to the first workshop, which is the framework, where we understand why certain things are reinforcing for children with special needs, right? We discussed in detail about why certain behaviors arise due to certain cognitive arrangements, neurological functionings, and everything. Okay, so with that background, I'm moving ahead with the same decision, with the same conclusion that if a behavior is going down, okay, then definitely then definitely the consequences should be undesirable. Okay, so sorry, the figure over here is not really correct. So the function should be the consequence should be undesirable. If the behavior is going down, the consequence should be undesirable. All right, you need to remember that. So if the antecedent is there, behavior is there, and the consequence, if it is not desirable, the behavior has to go down. For example, okay, I'm hitting, okay, I'm constantly hitting the wall, and I'm getting the consequence that I want. Now, I'm the mother, and I come and I put a cushion in between the wall and the head. I'm banging the head. Am I getting the same consequence? Can somebody, you are free to respond in the chat box. If I put a cushion in between the wall and my head, will I be getting the same consequence that I had before?
Ma'am, the participants are saying no.
Sorry?
The participants are saying no.
Yeah. So it says that probably not. Okay. So that's why whenever the cushion is there, so when the cushion is there, will my behavior of banging head will still go on increasing or will be maintained? Will it be maintained? No, right? So probably not, because I'm not getting the same consequence. It will decrease, it will reduce. So whenever I'm banging the head, and every time there is a cushion in between, and I start banging head, and so banging my head when the cushion is there, that behavior will definitely go down because the consequence is not desirable. Right? Right? So this is what I want you to tell. I'm sure that you'll be having some similar experiences where you know that, okay, the behavior was maintained in one particular scenario and the behavior dropped down when certain things were done about it, right? So for example, let's say the behavior of a child disrupting the class by saying jokes inappropriately or saying something inappropriately, and the child getting attention. Okay, so that is maintained. So the peers are laughing, the teacher is yelling, okay, what did you do? Sit down or whatever. And the child is enjoying all this attention, right? So if a strategy is applied over here, that whenever the B behavior is there, that the child is disrupting this class by saying inappropriate things or jokes or something like that, nobody will laugh and the teacher will ignore the child. Over a period of time, his behavior will increase or decrease. Right? It should decrease. Excellent, right? It should go down because he's no longer getting the attention that he had. Okay, maybe the behavior will get converted into something. Yes, obviously, that's a possibility. But the behavior, the original behavior that was happening is going to go down if the consequence is not as he wanted. if, let's say, today we applied this intervention of nobody responding to him or not laughing or teacher not saying, and after 2 days, if again the children start laughing, the teacher starts yelling, again the behavior is going to go up. That's very much a possibility, right? Okay. So yeah, so I think you are getting the hang of it wonderfully. Wonderfully, all of you are getting the hang of it. And I'm very, very happy to see the responses over there in the chat box. These are really, really wonderful interactions from you. And this is how we learn, right? While interacting, we are going to learn. Okay. So now let's go into some deductive techniques. And the first one that is discussed the most, that is discussed the most, that is used very widely is extinction. So as children, our parents or our teachers also have used it. Okay, so some used it successfully, some did not use it successfully, and we are some way or the other familiar with this. Okay, so extinction is basically a behavioral technique where you withhold the reinforcement when the behavior occurs. All right. So for example, in the previous example that I gave you, that if the attention is, something that the child wants and we are withholding it, so we are not giving attention, okay? The children will not laugh, the teacher will not look, the children will ignore, the teacher will ignore, and that's what we call the reinforcement. So getting the attention is something very reinforcing for the child, and that is what is maintaining the behavior, right? So if we withhold that reinforcement, then we can say that we are applying extinction. So if the behavior is happening for something that is highly reinforcing, but in a very inappropriate way. So inappropriate behavior is happening for reinforcement. And we take hold of the reinforcement, we withhold it, we don't give that. And thus, once the reinforcement is not available, the behavior should go down, right? All right. So, but this ignorance of teacher and other students is very short time. How it will convert in desirable behavior for a long term. Wonderful. So that's what I said in the very first slides, that only applying reductive techniques or only applying positive techniques is not going to help. So over there, you'll have to have a solid plan in terms of additional techniques from, let's say, positively increasing behaviors or one or two other reductive techniques. And you'll have to have a solid plan over there so that you can convert it into a long time. So differential reinforcements would be used in everything. So it can be done over a period of time, obviously with a solid behavior modification plan, right? So this is one of the techniques that is there, very commonly used for if the behavior is happening for inappropriately happening for reinforcements. So for example, many times what happens is, if applicable to all age groups, yes, it is applicable. Yeah. However, it is very, very case specific as well. So you cannot say that. Even I would love to, have this discussion later in the finale segment as well. But since the topic is there now, that any approach you take, not just techniques, forget techniques, any approach if you take, let it be ABA, let it be RDI, relationship development inventory, let it be intervention, so let it be floor time, let it be play therapy, let it be early start dynamic model, let it be anything. So what a good professional or a good clinician should understand is that unless and until you establish a rapport with the individual, with your child, with your student, none of these things are going to work. So you can say that, okay, ABA does not work. No, it's this, it's that, it does not work. I will come and say, oh, flow time does not work. It's not so, it's not comprehensive and so and so and so. But it's not like that. So what we have to do is, as clinicians, we need to be judicious about what techniques we are using. And before that, we have to establish a strong relation with the student or the child. Unless and until that has happened, even if you're applying extinction, even if you're giving positive reinforcements, even if you're giving floor time and all the increase in the skills, in the play skills, in the social skills, things won't happen. There is a very beautiful line that children don't learn from those whom they don't like. So you have to be, if you have to be that much, what we can say, sensitive and very much present over there for case specific examples. You have to establish a rapport. You have to know what the strongest reinforce are for the child, what works, what does not work, what techniques from this approach I can use, what techniques from that approach I can use, and that's how you actually create a very beautiful program for the child. Okay, so program is something different. However, yeah, so nothing will work in isolation. Let me tell you in the first place only. So you'll have to, that's why, but it's a good point, it's a good place to start to know that there are these things that exist and they have valid base, they have evidence base, they are research based techniques. So most of the times professionals are not like I have been through that phase. So I was struggling very badly when I was handling my first behavioral challenge case when I was just a fresher and I was given out a 9-year-old child with autism and severe ADHD, non-verbal child who was biting himself, who was biting me, and I was covered with marks all over. And I was like, okay, I was like, a person sent out to a war without a gun. So, I mean, I'm sure that you might be, most of you, or many of you might have gone through such experience. So it's good to know what's there in the field and what is research based, what is evidence based, what is valid. You can come up with many other things and techniques like this animal's milk will work wonderfully and that rubbing that oil will work on scales. So you don't want that. See, as a clinician, I always insist that you have to have an open eye in terms of choosing an intervention. Even parents, they need to be very much aware about the evidence-based techniques that are there in the field. What your child is receiving as therapy is evidence-based or not. If the parents don't know, how will they monitor? So a very good place to start over here. All right. So extinction is when you hold the reinforcement. Okay. So definitely it's a problem behavior. And because it is inappropriate, it's a problem behavior, which is happening for a particular reinforcement. I see a teddy bear in the shop and I start, throwing a tantrum. I want that teddy bear. Okay. So teddy bear is reinforcing and my tantrum is the behavior which is inappropriate, obviously. Right? So this is how the extinction goes. So if in this case, if the tantruming child gets the teddy bear, what will happen to the tantruming behavior? If the child is tantruming for the teddy bear, and if the child gets the teddy bear, what will happen to the tantruming behavior? It will be reinforced, it will increase. Wonderful. So extinction, how will you apply extinction over there? Now you know that the inappropriate behavior is tantruming and the reinforcement is there, which is the teddy bear. So how will you apply extinction? Will you give the teddy bear to the child? No. So withholding the teddy bear, yes. So withholding the reinforcement, not giving access to the teddy bear for an inappropriate behavior. Okay, so if the child is tantruming for teddy bear, tantrum being the inappropriate one, if you withhold the access to the teddy bear, then then we are applying extinction on. And if it is repeated over and over again, so whenever there is tantrum for a particular thing, you don't give it. Tantrum for a reinforcer, you don't give it. Tantrum for a reinforcer, you don't give it. Supposedly over a period of time after, the behavior should drop down because it is not ending into a result that is expected. All right, so that is extinction. So it's a very, very layman term and not layman term, I would say. It's a very simple example, okay? As a technique, it's very, 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 very simple to understand in this slide. However, I know that there are parents out there, there are professionals out there who have applied extinction and they have gone through a ruckus. All right. So let me come to the ruckus part later. Let's take some examples. Okay. What if the child keeps showing the tantrum while withholding the reinforcement? Obviously, if you are applying extinction, as an intervention, you don't give it. However, you need to consider the safety and safety of the child and others. So either you can move the child to somewhere else instead of giving the item just like that, or you'll have to, apply other techniques like RIRD or something like that. You can divert and guide into something, or you'll have to have a highly reinforcing item in front of you with which you can divert the child. Or if you are in a session and if it is happening, you can produce a low difficulty level task up, and then the child performs it. And as a reinforcement for that, the child gets the item. Okay, that way everybody is win-win. I'll be coming to this kind of things in the next workshops. I know you will be having thousands of questions. I'm sure. All right. So screaming. Okay. So if the child is, let's take screaming. All right. Screaming is an appropriate behavior or inappropriate behavior? Tell me. Screaming is an appropriate behavior or inappropriate behavior? Inappropriate. Okay. Okay, I'm in a dark lane and somebody is catching me and I scream. Would you still call it inappropriate? It depends. Yes, it depends. So anyway, whenever the professional is sitting down in front of, a parent who is coming there with, these kind of things that, okay, this is, that is causing problems and this is a problem behavior, we need to first be clear in our heads whether, we want to apply FB over here or not, right? So just give you an example, which is like very ethical questions in our field. Okay, so let's say it is an inappropriate behavior. So basically why I gave you this example is that we need to be clear in our mind what exactly is the inappropriate behavior. Okay, so the behavior in front of you, when it is presented, we need to understand as professionals whether it is inappropriate, appropriate, what is the form of the behavior and how we are going to, what aspect of that behavior, what's the topography, what aspect of that behavior that we are going to put an intervention on, right? So that's why I gave you that example. So the child is screaming in the car so that, the parent can turn the radio on, okay? And okay, so you used to plead with him to stop screaming before. Okay, whenever the child is crying and crying and crying, and you say, oh, don't do that, don't do this, and yeah. And now when you are applying extinction, okay, your behavior analyst tells you that, okay, apply extinction, and you're applying extinction. That means you're not interacting with the child on the topic of putting on radio, or you're not providing attention or something like that, right? So the same response that you would be giving upon the child's tantrum for video, you're not giving. So you're withholding that response. Okay, so that means that you are applying extinction over there. Tantrums, right? This is a very common thing that we apply, that we all have gone through many times as professionals, right? Excessive scratching. Okay, your child scratches, wounds excessively to the point of causing harm, causing blood coming out and everything. Okay, and every time the child would do this, you would tell that don't do, or you would go and put a cotton on and everything, so and so and so, and something like that. So you would pay a lot of attention and you would do certain things and everything. Now you place okay, so now what you do is, instead of telling don't do and doing a lot of other stuff, yelling at the child, what you do is you just put on gloves so that he can't get the same reinforcement of after scratching. So you have applied an intervention which will block the reinforcement. Okay, and that's where the behavior will go down of scratching over the gloves. No, it won't happen, right? It won't happen. So this is just one of the examples how to put intervention of extinction in place, right? I would love to do a Q&A. How much time do we have, Deepti?
We have time, ma'am. We have about 1 hour 15 minutes left.
Okay, so I'll take this example in the Q&A only. So be ready with an example, a hypothetical example, where I will ask, the participants, we can take up an example and we can put intervention of extinction over there. All right. Okay. So now moving next. Okay. So the point of focus over here, whenever you want to apply extinction, the thing that you want to remember the most is that you have to know what is the reinforcer for which the behavior is happening. If you don't know what's the reinforcer in the environment, you will never be able to apply, extinction in the first place. So usually it is tangible or the attention. So extinction is most commonly used for tangibles when the function is tangible or attention, right? So for attention, when we apply extinction, it is also called as planned ignoring, which we will come in the next slides. But the important point to focus over here, or they remember over here, is that you have to know what is reinforcer, what is reinforcing this behavior, right? And that way only we'll be able to apply extinction. So as I was saying, generally when during extinction of attention, what we do is we don't ignore the child, but we ignore the behavior. And how? There are very few ways in which you can ignore a behavior. Is basically whenever there is an undesirable behavior happening, and mostly it is for attention, then that behavior will not be met with eye contact or physical contact or verbal reinforcement or reactions and everything. Usually what happens is that, if there is a really notorious child, and if there is another sibling to which the mother is attending to, and he will look and look and look, and he will go stand near the TV. Okay. And what he will do is that, okay, he will put a hand on TV and say, Mama, shall I throw it down? Shall I bring it down? All right. And at that time, when the natural response of the mother will be to leave the other child and go to the child and say something like, okay, no, don't do that, this and that and everything. Okay. So usually this is how function attention scenario will be like that. Okay. So I don't know how much I would say that, the mother should apply extinction over here because TV is costly. But if it is happening for certain other behaviors, like for example, every time the mother is attending another sibling, the child is screaming, she can simply ignore the behavior. Okay, so how? We are not ignoring the child. By that, what I mean is that we always keep an eye on the child's safety. If by engaging into the inappropriate behavior, the child is seeking attention, but at the same time, if the child is engaging into the activity in such an intensity or frequency that the safety of the child or other people around is in danger, we do not apply planned ignoring. For example, self-harming is the inappropriate behavior to gain attention. We will be very cautious if we want to apply extinction over there or planned ignoring over there, right? So it has to be a very, very judicious decision, and under the observation of experts and people who are who can handle these things, who have experience in handling these things, right? So what about managing TV scenario? Okay, maybe we'll have to be creative in terms of that scenario. Okay, if I am the mother, maybe I will change the place of the TV. I will wall mount it at a higher place, okay, where he cannot reach. And I'm sure when I wall mount it on the higher place, he will go for the vase or the glass or the dining table. So this is where we want to understand what are the other positive behavior increasing techniques that can be applied over here to reduce and to, let's say, replace this behavior. See, we know that this behavior is happening for attention, right? So what are the other ways? This is called DRO, differential reinforcement of other behavior, which I will be explaining in detail, right? So we will be covering a lot of examples in that. So maybe some other places where we can give positive attention to the child so that the child does not have to go to the vase or the TV or to the dining table or something like that. Okay, so there are a lot of things that we need to consider. Okay. Okay, so when we are applying extinction, when we're applying extinction, the main thing is that we need to remember is that, sorry, I would like to go to the next one. Yeah, we discussed this. Yes. So about this slide, I have put a very good resource on applying planned ignoring when there is attention seeking. So do check out the resources, and this is the title of it. Okay, so yes, you can ignore the behavior without ignoring the child. There are very ethical measures that we need to consider as parents and professionals when we are applying extinction. And it's highly important for us, parents and professionals, to know what they are. So do go to the resources and do check it out. All right. It is always very, very important that we don't ignore the child, but how to ignore the behavior, right? So a word of caution, and it is very funny that when you apply extinction, be prepared to face the extinction burst. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but there is something called as extinction burst. So what happens is that, okay, I'm tantruming, okay, for a teddy bear, okay, the previous example. And the tantruming intensity is at this level right now, okay. Usually I know that when I do tantrums, I usually get the teddy bear, I get the candy, I get the cycle, whatever I want, okay. So this is my stage right now before applying any intervention. The parents go to the therapist, they talk and everything, okay, let's apply extinction, all right? So this is where they start applying extinction. Up till now, my intensity of behavior is this. With this much intensity, I'm showing tantrums, okay, let's say 40%. Now, one fine day, they're going out, the child is tantruming, the parent remembers to apply extinction to withhold the reinforcement, okay? She decides not to give the teddy bear. My natural response as a child will be that I will increase my intensity. I was tantruming with this intensity. Now, after I know that I'm not getting, I'll cry even harder, naturally. And so once we are going ahead with time when we're applying extinction, my behavior, inappropriate behavior, the intensity of the behavior is supposed, naturally it goes to a peak, all right? So it is something that is there inevitable when you are applying extinction. So the inappropriate behavior usually tends to increase if the function is tangible or attention and you are applying extinction. There is always this scenario that the behavior is supposed to increase. Okay, it increases, and the child shows the inappropriate behavior to the highest capacity of him or her, right? And that is somewhere we can call it as the peak. And after a stage where the child can no longer show, increase the intensity of the behavior, there is a sudden burst into that behavior, and the behavior usually drops down drastically. Okay, that is called as extinction burst. But let me remind you, this phase is the most crucial and painful phase, right? So I remember one of my children, it was my first session with him. He was 4.5 years old, and he was having severe ADHD and mild autistic symptoms. He was verbal, but he had a lot of impulsivity and a lot of negative behaviors due to the lack of functional communication skills. And he comes into the therapy session and he wants to flip the chair. He is escaping and he wants a certain thing for which he wants to do that to distract me by flipping the chair and get to the item. And I've blocked that item using the chair, and I'm not letting him flip the chair. Okay. And well, this took for the child at least 40 minutes. So the extinction, the behavior started at this level. And at, let's say, 10 minutes of the session, like 0 session, the therapy session started, 0 minute. And on the 10th minute, this whole thing started. And at the 40th minute, we were on the peak. So the entire 30 minutes, the extinction burst was building up. So the intensity of the behavior was just building and building and building and building. Initially, it was just, looking at me and, just trying to flip it. No. Then he put more force on it. No. Then he put yelling. Then he put screaming. Then he put crying. Then he put physical aggression on me. So all these sort of things sort of peaked up. And till the point where, he no longer could intensify it. And even then, the chair, I did not get access to the child for that thing, and the behavior suddenly dropped. But now in this scenario, there were a lot of things that I had to consider. I had to look for the child's safety. So I knew that I was in a therapy session which was cushioned. So even if the child is, flipping down or falling down or hitting the head on the wall. He's not, because he was getting very aggressive in everything. Then I knew if he was coming to bite me or hit me, I knew what to do. There was a table in between. Okay, so I could really go back and save myself. All right, there were a few things that I had to think about it before, and then I had applied the extension. So one has to be really careful about these things. So one has to be really, really experienced in terms of how you want to apply this and everything. However, for normal things, for regular scenarios, we can definitely apply extension. But whenever you apply extension, the behavior goes up, and this should be the scenario. But it's like the Lord is testing you, definitely. So mark my word, and you'll remember me if at all you are applying extinction. Okay, the limitations of it is that the behaviors may still happen even if you are applying extinction. As I said, the child will go for TV. If you apply extinction for TV, he will go for vase, he will go for some other object or something like that. So limitations is that it may still happen. So it can never work in isolation. Okay, you'll have to have a solid other plan in place to how you're going to support it with. It is extremely hard and complicated for non-professionals. If you don't know all the nitty-gritties about it, all the niches about it, you are likely to fail. Okay, and very miserably, let me tell you. I'm not scaring you, but yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that get into it, dive deep into the knowledge, get yourself certified and get valid education and get yourself valid training so that you can apply these things. These work wonderfully. They work wonderfully if you are applying it judiciously. Yeah, planned ignoring will only extinguish the attention-based behaviors. You need to be very consistent in the approach. So one day you are applying extinction, and next day, if you're not applying extinction, the child learns that, okay, this current level of intensity is not working anymore. I have to try with larger intensity in order to get the object that I want. So we are teaching the child in turn to cry loudly, to tantrum loudly with more intensity if we are not consistent. Do you understand what's happening over here, right? So yeah, and it's not always an appropriate choice. So extinction would not always be the solution to it. Let me come to the next technique now, RIRD. This is very, very beautiful technique, and it's a very creative one. It demands a lot of creativity and thinking on part of the professional or whoever is applying the technique. All right, it's called response interruption and redirection. I'm just so pumped up by just talking about it. Okay, and yeah, so it involves two main components: blocking or interruption and redirection. So this is how you can remember them. Okay, so blocking and redirection, RIRD. RIR is what is it said. And if you go and Google it, RIRD, you'll find hundreds and thousands of articles that are there, which people have researched on RIRD. They have applied into experimental settings, and they have got with, how it is very, very useful, and what's the research base and evidence base. You'll get everything on the Google. Okay, so it is mainly used for two problem behaviors. So vocal stereotypy and stereotypic motor behaviors, which is vocal stereotypy is basically where you'll be having high functioning autistic children who would not stop talking, right? So that's vocal stereotypy. They will keep on going on and on and on, or echolalia or something like that. So that's vocal stereotypy. Stereotypic motor behaviors is self-stimulatory behaviors that we see in everyday life when we're dealing with children, especially, so right, specifically autism. So self-stimulatory behaviors like spinning, rocking, all those other things, for that RIRD can be used. And it's not just limited for this. RIRD is not only limited for vocal stereotypy or stereotypic behaviors. It can be creatively used in many other ways. So for example, I used it with a child who was throwing things on and off. He would see things, he would throw. He would see things, he would throw. So we sat down with the parents, we devised an RIRD plan, and we trained the parents into how to do that, and we got the behavior to reduce. So you really have to be, you can be very creative in terms of, operating this. So as I said, there is a lot of research base, and there is this 2009 article where, for autism stereotypic behaviors, RIRD was, very, very effective. There are multiple other examples you can find online, and that, they tell the importance and effectiveness of this thing, RIRD. So now in RIRD, what we need to do is that we take a behavior and we understand it. So for example, let's take the behavior of let's say spinning the object, okay, spinning the wheel of the toy. And let's take that as the behavior, inappropriate behavior that we want to change. And we have selected the RIR for that. Okay, so now we have identified the behavior. This is our first step. So spinning the parts of the toy is our behavior, inappropriate behavior. Now, after doing the FBA, the data is supporting that the function is sensory, and yeah, it is happening regardless of anybody being present or time of the day or something like that. It is there, it's in front of you, the child is engaging into that. Okay, so that's how we did the FBA. The FBA supports. Okay, now what happens is that now we have made the checklist and a step-by-step plan to implement RIR. Okay, I have included a few resources which tell you how to do this, but not in very depth. It's just a general listing. Again, you will have to have an OT, an SI, and an ABA specialist who will be helping you to design this behavior step-by-step plan. But a step-by-step plan has to be in place when you're applying RIR. Okay, so a step-by-step plan and implementation, and we define the technique. So for example, now the steps that are there in our plan are like, okay, the child takes the toy and starts spinning. Okay, now the first component of blocking or interruption will come into play. So how will you block or interrupt? Will you just will you just take the toy away from the child? No, that will give rise to other problem behaviors, crying and screaming and hitting. Okay, so no, that's not how we block or interrupt. Okay, maybe I will bring something else. Okay, something else that the child likes. For example, the child likes bubbles. So the child is sitting there with this thing, and without saying anything, okay, I will come with bubbles and I'll try and interrupt the behavior of spinning by blowing bubbles and try get the child's attention towards that. Okay, so this is my step-by-step plan. Okay, bubbles is one thing. What if I'm there in public place and there is no bubbles, or I'm at somebody else's place and there is no bubbles? So there has to be an alternative plan for that. What can I do to interrupt the behavior that is happening, and how I can redirect the child? Once the child is engaging into the appropriate behavior, we like celebrate it, we reinforce the behavior, wow, wonderful and everything. So the child's inappropriate behavior is no longer in the picture, yet the child is engaged into something else, which is very, very appropriate and probably giving the same function. Okay, so that is the catch over here. That is the place of creativity and your skills as professionals that come. Okay, so that we have done. Then we have defined the techniques and measures to block and interpret, block and interrupt, and then step-by-step redirection. So we have to have a really solid and concrete plan. And then after that behavior, the behavior stopped, right? The child stops spinning and engages into the bubbles, because bubbles are even more highly reinforcing than the spinning. Okay, so we have to really know the child, what works for the child, what are the highest reinforcers, how, what helps the child. Is it, some visual that helps the child, or is it some song or some sound that helps the child to, redirect the attention? So what is it that works best with the child? And that we apply step by step, and then we reinforce the other behavior highly. All right, so this is how you want to go about it. This is just an introduction. Okay, the professionals, so the note that I have for is that the professionals really have to equip the parents well when they are at home and they are applying it. So parents will it will be very, that's why the step-by-step plan needs to be in place when we are recommending RIR. Okay, so they really need to teach and educate the parents. So it's also important to take the perspective whether we want to apply RI or not, whether we want to decrease a particular stereotype or not. I'm sure that, typically developing children and adults, we all have stereotypes. When I was growing up, I remember that as a child, I had this compulsion, or I had this routine that I would chew equal times on each sides when I was eating. Yeah, well, over a period of time, it just passed. I mean, it was not harmful. It just passed, and it just didn't create any problem. So you'll have to, take parental consent. We have to, really. It's not always a bad thing. Restrictive, repetitive behaviors are not always a bad thing. However, what makes them alarming is the intensity and the intrusiveness of those behaviors into the child's day-to-day functioning and social functioning. Right. So that we need to take into consideration. All right. So who is going to tell you about this? Who is going to tell you that, okay, this is the right steps to apply RIR? These are the right steps to apply extinction. If there is the extinction burst, then at that point, what you are supposed to do? Who is going to tell you that? Okay, a qualified behavior analyst. So all these BCBADs and BCBAs and RBTs and all those people, they're qualified to do all these things. So get in touch with one of these people and they'll be happy to help you out with your particular behavior in mind for your child or your student. All right. So and also trust in this thing that you'll have to really see what the child wants. Okay. So going only by one thing, one approach, one technique, one person's guidelines is not something that you should be taking into mind. So be open about things, be vigilant, and be observant about things. Right. So these are the books and references that I've used to create my PPT, and some of them are really, really beautiful. So do go through them, and thank you, and hit me with your questions. All right. I'm sorry if I've taken a lot of time of yours.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
this
much.
wonderful session, ma'am. There are a lot of questions there, but before we move on to our Q&A segment, I would like to tell you and inform you that we've understood about how to use both the techniques effectively and also giving us the guidance in terms of precaution on what are certain things that we need to keep in mind was very effective. I think that will give us a guidance, both professionals and parents, on what can be done and how to do it effectively. Thank you so much for doing it. Now, I would like to inform all the participants, ma'am, if you could let me share my screen.
Yeah, I stop sharing. Thank you so much.
So before we begin with our Q&A segment for today, I would like to inform all the participants about resources. So as part of each of the workshop, Ability has been striving to create efficient resources that you can use to know more about the concepts and the techniques being taught with your students. So I'm going to show you how is that you will be able to access all these resources. All you have to do is to log into your Ability account with your login credential and click on Student Success here. Once you do that, you will be redirected to this page where you will find this navigation panel, and you'll have to click on the resources and click on exclusive resources so that you will be able to access all the resources that are being created for each of the workshops. So by clicking on any of the resource, you have a provision for you to actually view the resource, and also a provision for you to download the resource and read this resource. And another interesting option that you also have is if you feel another professional or your fellow friend will find this resource very useful or very effective, you'll be able to share it in all social media platforms from here. And you can also copy the link from here and share it with them. Another interesting provision that I feel like, which is very helpful today, is that we all run out of storage spaces and we always find it difficult to store something which is of high volume. So if we have another interesting provision here is that of bookmarking certain resources that you find is really effective to you. So going on to this bookmarked resources section, you will be able to access those resources from our Ability platform only. So as part of today's workshop, we have shared 4 exclusive resources about both extinction and also RIDR. So just do have a look at it and let us know how effective it was been for you. And also, as Tejashree ma'am said, this is just the part 1 of the behavior modification and management. I'm sure there are a lot more techniques on how to increase and improve positive behaviors, and also about functional communication training and social skill training, which would be conducted as subsequent workshops. So if you're interested for the same, just do check the link out and register yourself for the same as well. Now let's begin with the Q&A segment for today, ma'am. So we have our first question from Mr. Harshal. Though he's not here with us, I found the question very interesting. So his question is that, like, how to use all this behavior modification technique, especially extinction and RIR, without hurting the feeling or the sentiment of the child, without offending the child.
Yeah, so it's very, very important that, it's an excellent question that when we are withholding something, there is an element where the child is definitely going to be hurt. and he's going to feel bad about it. Yeah. So when we are doing it, one who is applying extinction always has to be sensitive and keep an eye on the child's safety, and any kind of safety. We don't want even emotional injuries happening to the child, not just physical. Okay. So when we are applying extinction, uh, maybe it could be a good idea to apply RIR in addition. Okay. Also, maybe if it is happening for one particular item and just the form of the behavior is inappropriate, which is tantrum, and maybe another appropriate behavior, if the child is non-verbal, let's say, all he has got is tantrums to ask for a certain thing. And yes, the form is inappropriate. So what we can do is we can train him into using a picture card instead and reinforce that behavior so that he can get access to whatever he wants just by showing that particular card or whatever it is, the action, something like that, maybe just pointing. So the same thing, if that is accessible, that is something that you can give to the child, but the form is inappropriate and you are applying extinction for that, definitely you want to reduce the tantramic behavior. At that point, there is something called as prompts. Okay, so there is hierarchy of prompts in which a parent could be trained into, and how a parent can prompt and guide to give that particular correct response, appropriate behavior, so that that behavior is reinforced and the child can immediately get that. So, as I said, it is very case specific, and you need to really understand what are the child's needs, what are the child's strengths, and how we can, devise the effective plan about it. We'll be talking a lot about it in the last finale segment.
Thank you for sharing your insight, ma'am. So I think it's all about using a combination of techniques rather than going for one specific technique in itself, right? Okay. The next question is from Mr. Joyce.
Sorry, just to add to it that most of these problem behaviors have the answers to it. There's nothing that cannot be, there cannot be alternatives to it. That is what I found very interesting in ABA, or even in when I've been working with children with special needs. Yeah. So yes, I know the situation might look very difficult, but yes, we can work our ways around it. But we need to have that faith and that kind of an approach. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. So the next question is from Mr. Joyce.
Yes, good day.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi, I just want to ask, I have this kid. How are we gonna deal with if the kid keeps on saying I'm tired and get angry, like turning the video and audio in an online class and walks away? This kid is a 4-year-old kid, a girl, and how can we possibly intervene with this kind of behavior? Even if the mother and the mother are in that class, she still got a little tired, I think, even if we're not doing anything yet. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like, let me just say it again. Let me paraphrase it. If I'm wrong, please correct me. So there is this 4-year-old girl who is there in a classroom, and she just gets away saying that I'm tired and I don't want to do stuff, and goes to iPad or videos, even though the mother is there. Is it correct?
Yes, it's correct.
Okay. Looks like, very, very, from the basis of just the apparent picture, it looks like this is an escape behavior. So escape behaviors could be dealt with in variety of ways. First, you want to see when escape happens because either there is no interesting things happening, or the difficulty level is too high or too low that the child doesn't find it challenging, or there is something aversive present in the environment because of which the child is avoiding this situation, either a person or an object, okay, something like that. So if you will have to assess the whole thing in this way. So if you find that the child is not interested, disinterested, then maybe a lot of positive reinforcement would be brought in, new reinforcers, change reinforcer, high reinforcers, reinforcement schedules can be thickened, and that could be done. If the difficulty level is a problem, if the child is finding it too high or too low, we can adjust the difficulty level along with the positive reinforcement. And if there is an aversive factor available over there in the environment, maybe a particular person, or maybe an object, or sunlight, or strange sounds, or whatever it could be, any aversive factor, we need to think about that and we can eliminate that. And once we do all these things, I'm sure there would be one or two things which will be clicking right, bang on.
Okay, thank you very much. That will be helpful. Thank you very much. I will try it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have another interesting question from Miss Deepa.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask the question on our behalf. So her question is, so do we have any neutral behaviors? We said all the behaviors either have a positive or a negative connotation to it, communicating something on those lines, right? So are there any behaviors that are neutral in nature is a question.
Definitely, definitely. So as I said, the perspective matters. So for example, if I have a child who is on the spectrum and who has this habit of, laughing to himself, and it depends how I'm looking at it, how the perspective is. So laughing to himself is not really, if you see the child is happy, the child is not harming anybody else or himself. So I may consider it okay, neutral behavior. If the behavior is too much, and if it is intruding into the learning capacity and social and social functioning of the child, then definitely there is the connotation that we will have to give, that we may have to look into this behavior. Otherwise, we discussed this in the very beginning, right? When we were understanding challenging behaviors, how do we understand whether a certain behavior needs to be changed or not? Right? So they can refer to that workshop if they're interested. Whoever, Deepa, and I hope Deepa is. Thank you.
Yes, participants who missed our earlier workshop on the functions of behavior, you can definitely go back and check our workshops in the on-demand section. You'll get more clarity on all the functions of the behavior. The next question is from Miss Aruna. Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Aruna.
Yeah, actually, I have a 6-year-old daughter. Nowadays, whenever we used to say no, whatever it might be, she might ask for a biscuit, or she might ask something to open, or so she might ask something I want. Like, if we say no, she's not able to take it. Immediately, she starts hitting. Like, if the immediate no, she's not able to take it nowadays. Previously it was not like that, but I don't know, maybe she has found that like this will give me whatever she wants, or I don't know why she's doing it. But
I was
I
going
don't
to ask you the same thing. What happens immediately after she says no?
She hits me, just say no hitting, that's it. Like,
Yeah,
we
so
don't
she
give
hits.
her immediately.
Okay, so immediately after hitting you, what happens?
We just try to correct her, like, this is not right, like, no hitting. And she cries very loudly, and she for 5-10 minutes the crying episodes will be there. And till she gets it, like, we generally don't give it, but she identifies the timing of that. Maybe she might get that if I ask now, like when I'm on a phone.
Excellent example. Sorry to interrupt you. Excellent example, Aruna. So now you only tell me, this is something that we discussed today. So what do you think is happening over here? I think it's a classic case of, extinction not being consistent. So where the child is learning that, okay, this much intensity works sometimes this much intensity works, sometimes this intensity works. So the child is manipulating through applying the intensities, seeing that, okay, one particular intensity just fits to the matter. Maybe she's in a public place and she applies this intensity, she gets it. If she's at home and parents can still apply some more extinction and at this intensity, then they give up and give. So something like that might be happening over here. So if you are, as I would say, that this is just my guess that this might be happening. There might be some other factors playing along as well. For example, let's say the child is verbal or non-verbal counts, her other skill repertoire counts, whether there are functional communication skills available, there are social skills available for her to engage into appropriate behaviors or not. So all these other things are coming into play when we are thinking about this behavior, but mainly it looks like it is in an extinction which is inconsistently applied. And that's why the child is still learning. The child's learning out of it is that, okay, there are varied intensities I can use to get the stuff I want. Am I correct, or is it not the exact?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Like sometimes she's identifying the right time to do this because she knows that now I might get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mantra. Okay, I would love to tell you a mantra of behavior analysis, that the behavior will go where the reinforcement will flow. Okay, so the reinforcement, wherever it is reinforcement, there the behavior will go. And for that reinforcement, they're willing to do anything. So they're willing to learn that, mental, manipulation sort of stuff. They will apply logical reasoning over there, everything, problem solving and everything over there, because the reinforcement is there. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aruna. Hope that answers.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very beautifully put. Where the reinforcement goes, there the behavior flows. Well said. And the next question is from Mr. Rohitish. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Sorry, I wasn't. So, my thing is that if I ask my child, even if he knows that he is doing something wrong, okay, and he probably, if you make him understand, he understands that it is wrong. Yeah, he's 16 years old and he's in high school now.
Mhm.
His child and his teacher. So I want him, and it's not only for this child, maybe for everybody. I want him to. I'm trying to get him into the habit of first listening to what somebody is saying, then understanding what is saying, looking at them, and then responding, rather than just as a reflect reaction. No, Anvit, why are you doing
Mhm.
this? No, Papa, I'm not doing it. And or Anvit, you're not paying attention in class. No, Papa, I'm paying attention. Okay, tell me what did the teacher say. Now he doesn't know, so he will
Mhm.
not paying attention. But but first thing, I mean, for anybody to correct something, first he has to accept that yet he is doing something wrong, and then correct it. And even otherwise, other life situations also, you're not supposed to react. Your first reaction should not be to deny it, or just say something without understanding
Okay.
what the person
Okay.
is saying.
Okay, so looking at, sorry to interrupt you, but looking at the example or looking at the description that you have given, can we say that the inappropriate behavior is saying no as a response to everything? Is that the inappropriate behavior you're looking at?
That's the first reaction, no. But when
Okay,
you argue or when you explain, or if you say really Anvit, you're not doing this, then say no, no, Papa, I'm doing it, and then we can get to the remedial part of it. But even forget
okay.
the specific questions. But even for life, you need, whatever somebody is saying, you need to first understand and then react. Your
Well,
reaction should not
can,
be
okay. Your child is on the spectrum, you said, right?
yes.
Okay, so do you understand the framework that we discussed in the previous workshops? Were you there?
No, I was not there, but I know it.
Okay. All right. So there are certain things which are the basis of condition specific behaviors, right? So let's say cognitive functions, and there are some neurological aspects to it, the way they see and the way they process the things and the way they react to certain things, right? So you need to understand that he is having certain sort of shortcomings on his hand which he is not in control with. Okay, so that is one aspect. Second thing, if we look at core topography of the behavior or core form of the behavior, let's go and try and discuss what could be the function. So whenever you say something to him, his first reaction is no. Is it when it happens when you're putting a demand on him? Like for example, solve 2 plus 2. He will say no. Is this something like that is
No,
happening?
no, no, no.
Then how does it happen? Can you give me a brief
So,
example?
like I said, he's not paying attention in class. He's busy, either tapping or his mind is somewhere else, and he's not paying attention to his class. So if I say, Anvit, are you listening to what teacher is saying? Because these are our online classes now, right? So if I say,
Mhm.
Anvit, are you paying attention to what teacher is saying? Yes.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Then tell me what the teacher is saying. He doesn't know. And then he'll say, yeah,
Okay,
Papa,
so
explain.
definitely, okay, so if it is going on the line of inattention. So inattention is completely different segment. Okay. If we go by the function of it, definitely whatever stuff he's learning online is not of interest for him, or he does not have the tools, mental tools to pay attention that much, that long, or to that particular topic. Maybe. So what happens is that children who are on the spectrum, I will be explaining this why children on the spectrum mainly, or developmental disability children mainly, perceive things or understand things visually 80% better than the 20%. So if the teacher is only talking, he will be already lost. So there are a lot of corrective measures to this. There are a lot of aspects to this whole example, which are, completely interlocking, and they are very diverse.
No, even
Okay,
even
so.
otherwise, for example, sorry to interrupt. Even otherwise, let's say he's talking loudly. Okay.
Mhm,
And I say, Anvik, we
mhm,
don't talk loudly. Whatever you have to say, don't talk loudly. We don't talk loudly. We shouldn't talk
mm,
loudly. And then he said, no, no,
mm.
Papa, I'm not talking loudly.
Okay, I love this example of mine. I love this client of mine, my student of mine. He was 18 years old with intellectual disability and mild intellectual disability and high functioning autism. All right. So he was this tall 6 foot fellow, and the main concern with him was being aggressive. Okay. Now you can imagine an 18-year-old fellow who is tall, who is hefty, and he becomes aggressive. And I was the one who was supposed to intervene with him. All right. So I was scared, I mean, completely. But, when I started working with him, when we did the FBA, and we arrived at a conclusion that whenever somebody says to him that don't talk loudly, he just gets aggressive. Okay. And he would just start hitting. So the intervention that we applied over here was completely different. We did not apply extinction. We did not apply planned ignorance. We did not apply RIRD. We simply brought in a visual. Okay, there is something called as a 5-point scale, which I will be talking about in detail in the section of visuals when we'll be talking about. So we just applied that visual. We trained him into modulating his voice, and instead of just giving a verbal instruction of lower your voice or high your voice or don't talk like this, don't talk like that, we just refer to, let's say, a yellow voice or a green voice. I can explain it better with the visual present in front of me, and you'll have a better sense of what I'm talking. But he was extremely happy to switch to the expected tones and modulations of voice we asked him to do. And when he showed appropriate voice, I would jump with excitement and say, wow, wonderful job. And he would say to me, oh, you're using a red voice. Go down to yellow voice. So there are different techniques that we can use. There is something called as instructional control when we're working with children with special needs. We can't just give verbal instruction and ask them to just follow it, because there is something called as auditory processing delay. There are other things like, visual processing being a stronger forte of these children. If we can come up with, certain techniques to play along with that, they're happy to listen to us. Okay, this example exactly, this technique exactly might not apply to your son or your child, whoever is there in your mind, but I'm sure that there are certain other things that we can implement over there, and definitely there will be wonderful results. I'm guaranteeing that to you. Right? So we need to understand our children, understand the difficulty levels that they're going through, understand their fortes, the strong points and their weak points. So children on the spectrum, especially children on the developmental disorder levels, their forte is visual processing. Auditory processing, no. If you give me an instruction, it is hitting on my eardrum, and it takes approximately 10 to 20 times longer for it to reach to the brain and get processed, and then the behavior will come up. Till that time, the teacher has given another instruction, which goes in another, which is another third one is coming up, and everything is just jumbled up, and the child just hangs. And the resultant behavior could be just looking at them or just getting up and going away because they don't know what to do. So there are a lot of things which are involved when we are looking at behavioral concerns. Okay, so wonderful example. Thank you for bringing this up, Rohitesh. And I'm sure that your child will be having certain fortes which we can use. and we can make use of certain other lot of techniques, and we can definitely build a positive repertoire, and I'm sure it will go down. We'll have to first do the FBA for this child, function of the behavior. What is the function for which it is happening? And then we will be able to apply techniques. But definitely we'll be able to, definitely. I hope I have given some sort of a guideline, some sort of an enlightenment into what's happening currently.
I was muted, so I couldn't say thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing this example up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The next question is from Miss Evelyn. Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Hi.
I'm from Philippines. Good evening. Hello.
Hi. I can hear you.
Okay. My 9-year-old daughter is mad at times. I let her stop playing online games and sometimes do inappropriate behavior like rolling her eyes on me and even using her feet. All I did is to just hug her. Sometimes it is how I deal with it, and sometimes when I'm not in the mood, I could even give her a thin pinch, which mostly increases her tantrums. It hurts me a lot to do that, but sometimes I need to do, which I think is okay. So what can you advise, please, ma'am?
Okay, so thanks, Evelyn. So if I'm paraphrasing it correctly, that your daughter who engages into watching video games or engages into iPad or something like that, and when you ask the iPad back, or you say that the time is over now, or keep it down, there are a few behaviors that rise up, and maybe that's what happens.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
yeah.
So it is again access to tangibles. If we look at the raw topography of the behavior, form of the behavior, the function could be derived to be tangibles. That is the iPad or the videos or whatever it is. So the visual stimulation is something that she's after. And obviously, right now, the times are such that the children cannot engage into certain other things or go outdoors or engage themselves appropriately. This is a widely faced problem. Okay, so and if the child is having any special needs, then this problem becomes even more, because then naturally the things don't come in terms of for the child, in terms of, say, the child's occupation rather is play. Like we all have occupations, right? My occupation is to be clinical psychologist. Occupation is something that we do most of the time of the day, right? So what does a child do most time of the day? He plays. Okay, so for, if the child is lacking play skills, so we can introduce a lot of play skills, social skills, other exposure, and other behavior could be reinforced. And maybe maybe it could be a token system or some other technique through which the videos could be placed as rewards after working for certain things. Then maybe we will be able to handle it a little better. However, we'll have to sit down and see the whole situation in a very microscopic way, and understand the child and how we can deal with techniques, juggle with techniques particularly. But roughly, it looks for tangible. So yeah, maybe
yes, ma'am. So that's really the problem, because they cannot really go out because of this pandemic. And then they don't have anything to do, just hold on to their cell phones and do gamings. Don't know what to
so
do.
a token system could be.
Yes,
yeah, a token should be.
Yes, teacher,
You
parents.
mentioned.
That's my problem.
You mentioned about pinching. Is it happening from the child's side?
No, some yes, mom, sometimes.
So it's when she gets really irritated, she may just increase her intensity to that. Okay, so we may have to be very careful in terms of not letting her, learn to increase the intensity of behaviors in order to get what she wants. So, that way we'll have to deal with it. As I said, we'll have to go microscopic.
Thank you so much, mom.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your perspective. The next question is from Miss Sunetra.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. It's lovely to listen to you, and I really appreciate it. I'm also a special educator. Now, I have a cousin who's a self-destructive autistic child, who's about let's say 49 years.
Self-destructive. Do you want to say self-injurious or self-harming?
That's right. Yes, that is true. And also, she has this habit of attacking others. Now, she also tends to bite others and herself. Now, could you please suggest some ways where we can, sort of fade out this slowly in a proper positive manner?
So first of all, she is having any special needs. You said autism or anything, did you mention? Hello? Is
She's a
she?
child, yes.
Okay, so we need to consider whether there are any sensory issues. We need to also consider that there are going to be, because it is condition specific, the communication and social skills will be low. So we will have to consider the FCT, the SST part. And she's how many years old? You said 16 years or something?
She's 49.
She's 49 years old.
Yes.
Okay. So by now, if we look at the age of the person, by now we will have to see that there are so many behavior patterns that the person has learned and they have got strengthened. Even though they are inappropriate behaviors, we have to understand that through repeated patterns of those being successful into getting what she wants, so hitting or tantruming or hitting others, being aggressive, or injuring self, or harming self, all these patterns, all these behaviors have been proven by far so far to be reinforcing. They have proven to give her what she wanted so far. So we need to understand that there is a very long learning history, which is a very strong history, and we'll have to bring in very powerful techniques to break all this. As I said, it can only be broken down once we apply functional communication training and other skills. We'll have to see how much is her self-help skills, how many are, how is she engaging through the day, is there any social stimulation or any other stimulation that is there in place. We need to consider the physiological needs as well. We need to consider the timelines during which the behaviors occur the most, considering the menstruation cycles and all those other things. So let's be honest and open over here that other physical needs also need to be taken care of. We need to understand that they are human beings and they also have needs. So what are we doing about that? So it's a wonderful, not wonderful in the sense that, for the person, but if we consider as a case or as an example, that being a 49-year-old lady who has been there on the spectrum for so long, and without proper communicative channels and communicative resources and social skills resources, and engaging self into appropriate community activities, or all those things need to be considered highly. And there are multiple techniques and plans that need to be in place for this person in order to reduce the problem there. Okay, behavioral outbursts or harmful behaviors have become her language. So something needs to be done about that. So there are many things which will bring the overall behavior of hitting or self-harming or harming others down. Okay, there are multiple factors. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So considering all the factors actually is very, very important in order for us to formulate an effective treatment plan, right? Okay, the next question is from Miss Mehek. So I'm just going to unmute her so that she gets to talk to you. Okay. So
hello, I have posted my question in chat. How do I get my 9-year-old child? Hi. How do I get my 9-year-old child focus and concentrate during online schooling? He tends to forget most of the concept taught in school. Also, he has extremely low attention span.
Yeah.
And post school, when I asked him what was covered in class, he would barely remember, I would say not even 1/5 of what was taught. And he doesn't stick to the timetable which he and me together have formulated. He would formulate a daily timetable, but he doesn't stick to it. And he would start studies at the time he had decided, but in that 1 hour, whatever work he had decided to finish, he would just barely finish 1/4 of it. And this saga is continuing. How do I break this
Yeah,
chain
yeah,
and
yeah.
get some
No.
productive work and he getting in charge of his own situation?
Well, how old is your child? 9-year-old, you said.
9-year-old, 9.
And is he having ADD or ADHD or something like that?
ADD. It's
Oh,
probable, not confirmed.
so
Diagnosis is not confirmed.
okay, okay. So even if we are not considering ADD or ADHD, this online class thing is not a very what we can say a very favorable situation for children. So children will come up with various ways to escape out of it. Okay, so it's something which is very the control of it is very much in the other person's hand, and it's I mean these techniques won't really fit over there. What I can say overall is that if we are considering ADD, there are certain visuals that can help. Okay, so for example, maybe organizing or making a tick mark sheet for which the target goals are there that need to be achieved, a reward system in place or a reward chart in place. If the child is that way responsible and capable, we can have verbal contracts and everything. So no, that way we can reward contracts and everything, so that there is a responsibility that is placed on the child. If that is not happening, we will have to we'll build up very small steps and reinforce them, and then get them towards into a bigger picture. But online classes is something which is a very vague area to discuss in order to apply certain techniques and something like that. So sorry.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So as we're running out of time, we'll also be taking last few questions right now. The next question is from Ms. Tara.
Hello.
Yes, please go
Hi,
ahead.
Sarah.
Hello, I'm also a special education teacher, but I do not have much idea on how to deal with the behavioral issues. I have a 13 years old boy who is diagnosed with the ADHD, and then he's also in the spectrum. So in the class, like he loves putting on the fan, then he loves the swinging of the fan, and he keeps jumping and clapping after putting on the fan. So that's very disturbing to other students. I tried to look at his interest, like, okay, I gave him a time, okay, you finish this small tasks and then you can put on the fan. So I tried to practice with his interest. It works, but after every 2 minutes or 3 minutes, he wants to put on the fan, and then after that, he doesn't want to stop it. He keeps jumping and clapping. And when I stop him, then he will pick off the chair or the table, and then he tries to hit me because he gets scared of me because I'm a little taller and then little, what to say, maybe he might find scary, but he turns on to the other classmates who are little, whom he can have control
Softer
over.
targets?
Yes. He targets all his friends and everybody is scared, and now the parents are scared to send the other kids into the school because of his harmful nature. So we also have a resource room where we can bring him, but he wants to be with a friend. He doesn't want to study alone. So what could be the other alternative strategies for him? Because he likes
as one
I
of
also
the
tried
participants.
giving him a spinner, like maybe he likes something spinning. So I gave him a hand spinner, but that doesn't give him the same reinforcement.
Yeah, because probably the function is not sensory. And in order to understand the function, as one of the participant has been writing in the chat box, we need to have the data before implementing the strategy. So we entirely one workshop, we have spoken about how to gather data about a behavior, so that we can discuss about what interventions could be in place, what are the functions of the behavior that are operating in the at the bottom line for this happening. And whatever data you have given me right now, based on that, obviously we'll need hardcore data, much more valid and quantitative, qualitative, whatever, descriptive data and all those sort of stuff. But looking at the information that you have given me, possibly it looks like the whole thing is happening mainly for an escape function. So what's happening over here, the chain is like when you put him in the classroom, and in order to escape from the tasks or demands or even the situation, he is doing that switching the fan off and jumping on things and everything. Okay, so once he does that, obviously you will go and try and put extinction that don't do this and don't do that. Once that is done, so for example, you have given a worksheet. Okay, you present the worksheet. Okay, he comes in the class, he greets everyone, you say hi and hello, that happens, he settles down. Okay, so far okay. You present him a worksheet, and then he starts doing all the stuff. Okay, and once he does all the stuff, you will say no, don't do that. You will probably make him sit and everything, and obviously this is getting him into angry mode, right? So once the worksheet was given, if you switch on the fan and everything, he's buying time. So he's escaping the worksheet, at least temporarily. Okay, and once then he starts the chain of it. So you say no, then he will get angry. You say no, don't do that, you'll make him sad, then he'll go hit another child. Then you know that you will have to run after him. So the worksheet is getting delayed, time by time, like second by second, minute by minute, right? So looks like it is escape maintained behaviors, and there is a chain of behaviors which is starting at the bottom of which might be the escape is there. So that's why the function is escape, and that's why even if you are giving him spinner, you know that it is highly reinforcing for him, but it is not working in this scenario because it is not the function. The behavior is not happening for the spinner. So the behavior will not go down, even if you present the spinner. So if he is getting to escape out of that situation longer and longer, yes, the behavior will be continued. Hitting other child is giving him escape. Screaming is giving him escape. Jumping on and off or hitting the table or whatever chair is giving him escape. So all this behavior will be continued because he's getting escaped. So if you want to work around it, you will have to see why he's engaging into escape behaviors. That is the functional behavior analysis that we'll be able to do only by getting data and observation and everything. So a valid base for our hypothesis of this escape, this is my hypothesis. This is a possible explanation. So unless and until we have data, we won't be able to apply intervention. So we'll have to sit down and see if escape is there, then we'll have to see what skills is he lacking and how we can train him into that, the prerequisite skills. And then maybe we can put him into certain other scenarios and place demands. And let's see if with higher reinforcements and everything, we can build up the positive behaviors step by step, working on shorter goals, reducing the difficulty levels and everything, right? Hopefully this answers.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering the question and for connecting all the concepts through, like understanding the functions of behavior is a key, and for us to formulate an intervention or choosing a technique. That's what you're trying to tell us, right? So it has to go in line, like what you did during our sessions. Thank you so much for doing that. And the last question for today's Q&A session is this: if you could share some insights about where they can go for further training for ABA, or what are the recent advancements and how that they can access to all this. If you could just give them a basic idea, that would be great, ma'am.
There is an institution called BMI, which is giving certifications in BCBA, BCBD, BCABA, and RBT. Apart from that, there are multiple BCBA, BACB approved franchises which can offer the RBT certification and training. So RBT is the registered behavior technician. So that's the beginning of the behavior analyst journey. So there are multiple of them available. Different universities are giving those kind of courses online and in training and in person. So if you Google it, then you'll be able to find more about it. So so that's there. And if you want to gain service from a behavior analyst as a parent, then there are very few people online. So SIBA on Facebook, there is this group called SIBA. So all the BCBAs who are registered with BACB, who have been qualified by passing the exams and the necessary fieldwork hours, they are connected to that group, SIBA. I forgot the long form of it. Solutions India Behavior Analyst or something like that, SIBA. So you can find that group on Facebook and you can join them. You can get in touch with the behavior analysts over there who are there in India.
Thank you so much for all those who are interested to pursue something on this line. Can definitely check this out in Google. That brings us to the end of today's Q&A discussion. Thank you so much, ma'am, for patiently answering all the questions and sharing your insights and inputs to it. And thank you all participants for actually being so engaging during today's session and sharing your inputs, insights, sharing cases so that we can all learn mutually. Do check out our further events, our upcoming webinar on the critical success for parents with children with special needs and what families can actually do, and which is happening on the 22nd of June. And we also have another workshop coming up in this week on number sense, on how to deal, like what are the certain strategies and techniques that you can learn to help children with special needs to teach them math skills. So do register yourself for the same if you're interested on these topics. We'll see you soon at the webinars and the workshops very soon. And I would like to check with ma'am her final thoughts or word of advice to all our participants today.
Wow, it has been a wonderful session, and I don't know, I went on and on and on. I hope that I have connected with the audience, and while giving answers to their questions, I hope that I have managed to get to what they were wanting, and also, to connect with what they were saying. So those were some really wonderful questions and participation and engagement. Wonderful, wonderful, and I can't wait to have the next workshops with all of you. So. Wonderful. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Ability, once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure listening to you and learning things from you. Do check out all our upcoming events. We have a series of upcoming events from both national as well as international speakers and a lot of series happening. So do register for everything that's of your interest so that you get to connect with all the workshops and webinars that are happening with Ability. Until we see you for the next time, it's a big bye from Team Ability. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.